Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Identity Management Exam EX362. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do, so you know when new content is available. Also, a reminder that these are my practice sessions for the exam. I'm going through all of the objectives and either explaining the objective or doing examples of whatever the objective asks you to do. And at the end of the video, I'll do a little assessment. And if I feel pretty confident with the objective, then great. If not, I have just over 2 weeks to fill in some knowledge gaps prior to the exam. That being said, these should not be considered tutorials, nor should they be considered training materials or authoritative information, though I do try to have the information accurate because hopefully at this point in my preparation I haven't learned something wrong. But understand I'm still learning right along with you, and you should not consider these tutorials or like official training materials. I put these out on the internet in hopes that if you are also working to prepare for this exam, you might see some of my examples and get some ideas of things that you can do to help yourself prepare. So I'm going to start with the last of the objectives within Install and Configure Red Hat Identity Management, and that's create users, groups, and policies. And I think I'm going to do a practice session for each of these three things just because I think one video, or rather one session to cover all of them, will be both long and probably quite boring, and I'll get tired of sitting in my chair. So we're going to focus on users for this particular session. And from what I understand, you have basically two types of users. You have, your normal user accounts, and you have staged users. I suppose you could say there's a third type of user, which would be a bind user, as it's called, and the whole point of that user is to have something that can't log into systems but can read the directory. The way that you make that bind user is going to use some different tools than what I'll use for what I think this objective is intending, and I'll cover that I think more with some of the later objectives of like doing Kerberized services and connecting IDM to some other applications for authentication. So there are a couple of ways of doing this. We'll start with the GUI way, and then we'll try the command line way. You can use Ansible to create users. There are some Ansible playbooks within the free IPA Ansible roles and playbooks from the Ansible-free IPA package. Let's go into Lab IDM server, and I guess it has still have an authentication token from the last time. So I'm in as the admin user. And something to keep in mind, and I think I mentioned this maybe in one of the first practice sessions, if you're coming to IDM from Active Directory, know that although there are a lot of similarities because both of them are LDAP services, and or both of them provide LDAP services, there are several differences. And one of which that I have learned is, at least with the version of free IPA that this is built off of, there doesn't seem to be the concept of OUs. Now you have groups and such, but organization units, such as you would have, an Active Directory and OU for all of your users, and within that OU for users, you might, or actually that's the container users, you may have OUs that are separated by office, so corporate or satellite office, and then within that you'll have other little sub OUs, and you'll have user accounts. User account objects within that. From what I gather with identity management and free IPA, it's all flat. You have the CN, I guess common name. Sometimes I think of that as container, and that's just coming from Active Directory. But the CN users, all of the users that you're going to see with this are within that. Oh, I forgot. There's a third type of user. That's the preserved users. I believe these are users that you've basically disabled, but they're not deleted yet. But we'll experiment with each of these. So for under identity and users, we're going to click add. We're just going to do this the GUI way, and then we'll do some command line stuff. And as a lot of my practice sessions use, I'll have good old test user 1. We're not going to specify a group ID for it because it will get that as a part of IDM. And we'll give it a password. We'll just use monkey123 for all of this stuff, with a capital M to make sure it's secure, right? And we can either add another or add an edit. We'll click edit, and you can see all of the different attributes that we can make. So we can add job title, geckos. Remember, if you think about making user accounts on our local user accounts on the Linux system, you'll see yes, like the comment for the user. I think this, you actually have display name. You know, some information about password expiration. You see the UID and GID that is made by default for the user. You can set its login shell if you would like, bin.sh or bin.bash. The alias, this is referring to the Kerberos principal, because in Kerberos, you have your user principals, you have a service principal and a host principal. This would be the user principal for Kerberos. If you want, you can add an SSH key to this. You can have certificates for users. We'll get to that in a little bit. You can set different authentication types. You actually can set up a two-factor authentication time-based token, which is kind of a nifty little built-in feature here. You can also do radius and some other things. And we get into Kerberos policy. We can set up password policies. That'll be something that we cover in different practice sessions. Set its email address. There's all sorts of attributes. So a lot of this will look kind of similar to user attributes for Active Directory. So I guess technically we've registered some clients because we have the IDM server and the replica servers. But what I'm going to do is see if I can log in as this user in IDM or in the web GUI. And as I suspected, it's going to, the first time a user would log into this, they have to change their password. We're going to put this to the test with a couple of other things as well. So current password will be monkey123. New password, let's see, let's do 456 monkey. See if it'll let me do that. And we do not have a one-time password for this this user. Looked like it let us do that, and we've logged in. Now notice, as a user, basically you can create and delete OTP tokens. And this, if I were to click add here, what it will do, actually let's see what happens. So let's test. I know on the command line you'll actually get a little QR code. So let's click add, see if it will do the same here. Yeah, so if you have, I use free OTP as it's recommended here, but any of your various two-factor authentication applications on mobile devices, you can use your little QR code here to set that up to where you have a token that you can use. But I'm going to delete this token so I don't feel like dealing with one-time authentication here. And you can actually see all of the active users. Now, I wouldn't be able, if I were to click admin, I can see stuff about admin, but I'm not going to really be able to do. Can I really reset admin's password with this? Because if so, that's quite curious, because this user, see what groups I'm in. Yeah, it's just in regular IPA users. Well, let's see if I can break my IDM instance. So let's see if we can reset the admin password. I will be very curious if this user can actually do this. So we'll do this one to 456 monkey. Okay, that I'm kind of surprised it's even made available in the GUI to do. But yeah, I figured that we couldn't. This user doesn't have the rights to do that. Let's see if we can delete it. Yeah, okay. I figured that that this will be just grayed out, But anyway, we can do that to our own user, I believe. So what I want to do now is make another test user. And we're going to try to SSH into one of the IDM servers and see if we have to reset the password. I was worried for a moment that it actually did change the password, but of course it did not. All right, so we'll add a test user 2, monkey123, monkey123, and this time we'll just click add. All right, so let's see if we can SSH into one of the replicas with this. All right, monkey123. Okay, so it is making me change that password. So monkey123, we'll do 456 monkey. So we're now into lab IDM replica 1. So let's log out, log back in with the new password, make sure that still works. Okay, so we're in. All right, so now what I want to do is make a user at the command line and then see if the password expiration behavior persists. I think that it does, but we'll find out. So let's actually, I guess we could be really cool and go ahead and SSH as admin. Let's see what happens there. Lab IDM server. Okay, so it's curious. It did not make, oh yeah, I don't think I have the making a home directory in auth select. So I wonder if it'll have already got me a ticket from Kerberos. So let's just try to do IPA user find. I guess it already can. It's giving me an error because it can't make a log. Okay, I don't feel like dealing with errors. So I'm just going to log in as my normal local user and just get a ticket. Okay, admin, fat fingering my monkey password. There we go. All right, so to add a user, there's a couple of ways of doing this. We could do IPA user add and then -- help, and we'll get all the options, but this can also be done interactively. So let's try this interactively first. So first name, we're going to call it test. Last name, user3. User login. By default, it gives you T user3. I'm going to call it test user3. And it has made a user, but it has not actually set the password for this user. And this should be an active user. So if I were to refresh our users here, we have test user 3. I don't think test user 3 can log into anything. And we can put this, let me make a little private mode here. We can put this to the test. Yeah, and I don't think it will let me try to log in with no password. So effectively, you can't log in as this user right now, especially since there's no SSH key or anything made. So what I want to do, I believe we can set a password. Let's do, I believe it'll be user mod to set a password. Good old -- help. I think it's just -- password. Oh, that will prompt me to give it a password, or I could just do random. So let's do user mod test user3 and have it prompt us for a password. And we'll do monkey123. We see password is now true for this user, means there is one configured. So let's see if we can SSH into that replica machine. I'm lazy. I'm just going to do that because I have this set as a host file, or set in the host file for my workstation. Okay, so that is expired and it will have to change. Okay, so monkey123 456 monkey. Okay, so that's been done. Awesome. And just to show you, let me go back to here. IPA user add -- help. We could have done the same, have it prompt us for a password, or it would generate a new password for us. Also with user add, I mean, all of the attributes that you saw in the GUI, we can set that here at the command line and modify them. I think we modify most of them with the user mod command. One thing I did want to try, or see if I could demonstrate on the command line, was the OTP password. I think that is under user mod, or no, I think there was another command for it. One thing, I'll go ahead and show you this. This is your friend, IPA help topics. We'll show you a lot of the main commands for IPA. Notice a lot of my commands are like user - something. User would be in this list of like the top level commands. OTP is what I believe I'm looking for. So, and then on top of that, you can do IPA help OTP, and it will give you the subcommands, and it keeps going from there. So it's one thing that's nice about a lot of commands in Linux is there's often a decent bit of built-in help. So, and this is obviously good for the exam, so you don't have to just absolutely memorize everything, but it allows, in the real world, when you're doing this, and all these exams and such are supposedly trying to prepare you for the real world, you have this kind of at your fingertips versus having to always talk to Dr. Google all the time. So we'll do IPA OTP token add, and I believe we just need the username, but we'll do -- help just to make sure. Oh, I see. We have to specify the owner, I guess so. Well, let's try just IPA OTP token add with nothing and see what it does. I see. Well, this is what I was talking about. It creates a token. Okay, and the owner and manager is the user that that I have my Kerberos ticket for, which happens to be admin. Hope I haven't just locked myself out as admin. So to put that to the test, let's log out and in as administrator and see if I can still log in, even though I obviously have not set up that token on the device. Okay, so it'll still let me log in. Let's actually go into here and see. Yeah, I have it explicitly said to use OTP tokens, but I should be able to see the token that was generated. Obviously, I don't think I'll be able to get the QR code for it at this point. And we can delete and disable the token. We see that it's associated with admin. So we'll go ahead and delete this token because we don't need it. But I did want to show you how the QR code can be presented on the command line to be able to use that. I have a feeling on the exam, if you're asked to do OTP tokens, you'll probably just be configuring it and maybe checking the box saying enable that particular authentication method for the users. And one kind of critique I have, and I feels like each time I do a Red Hat exam, I have some critiques for the objectives, but create users is pretty broad. I mean, literally create user is just IPA user add, and that's it, versus doing these other configurations. And I have a feeling on the exam there will be other configurations that need to be done, which is why I'm trying to practice a few of these now. I do want to set the idea of a stage user though. So this, from what I understand, these users are it's like preceding a user. You don't have this user in a state where they can log in and such as, let's say that you have a new hire that for your company and they need to go ahead and have a user account ready, but they don't start until a certain date. And so this is where your stage user will come in. So let's try test. We'll call it stage user 1. Good old monkey123 is our password. Notice it does not have a UID yet. And if I were to try to, let me go back to my my private mode window here. What did I call that? Stage user 1. This should fail. Yeah, it's not going to let you log in. And from here, you can activate the user. At that point, they become one of the active users, and if I were to click in the, actually it showed on that, it go ahead and creates a UID for that user. The idea of the preserved user is kind of the same. Let me go back to my active users. Let's take test user 1, and I think there is a difference between disabled and purged or preserved. Let me enable this user. And all this stuff you can do on the command line as well. That's something on the exam. I'm a full believer in right tool for the right job. And most of the stuff I do with the Linux system is on the command line. But, if I'm on the exam, and unless it's like make 50 users and I need to, for each loop through them, I will probably do a lot of stuff within the GUI just to kind of have the, not necessarily safety net, but being able to visualize the stuff with the GUI. So I would encourage you, as you prepare, try to be familiar with both doing stuff on the command line and in the GUI. Don't just do one or the other. But when it comes time for the exam, whichever is easier for you to execute, whatever the objectives, by all means, do that. I see. So I can either just flat out delete a user or the preserve. And I believe when it goes to preserved, it does keep its UUID. Let's see if we can log in as test user 1. I don't think we can anymore because we've set this to preserved. This will be something that I want to read a little bit more about before the exam, just to have it in my head exactly the intended use of preserved users. But I think it's intended as like a recycle bin, for lack of a better phrase. Well, we change that to 456 monkey. Let's try 456 with a capital M. Yeah, so it's not going to let me log in, and that kind of makes sense. I suppose, as far as thinking real world, maybe you would disable a user temporarily. The preserved user is, all right, they've left the company, but maybe we keep the user account around for X number of days because of insert policy here. But I'm not totally sold on exactly why we would need this. But maybe it is that recycle bin thing. But that'll be something for me to research between now and the test, just to have in my head. So there's a variety of things that you can do with our user accounts. I have not actually worked with the making other subordinate IDs, and that gets into, when you're working with your containers and when you're using rootless containers, subordinate IDs deal with the owner of the processes that containers and such spin up. I have a feeling this won't be on the exam. Of course, I don't know. And if it is, I might be sunk, but that's not something I've touched much. But for the basic creating of users, I think I feel pretty confident with that. I can make them on the command line. I can make it on the GUI. I didn't demonstrate using Ansible with this particular practice session, but that is a method. They have actually a playbook for making users, and you just alter it to your specific needs. And one other thing to keep in mind with all Red Hat exams, everything has to survive reboots and such. So I wonder how that would work with passwords, because let's say that you have an objective that's make this user with this password. All right, you do that, but the first time the user logs in, you're prompted to change that. So I wonder if there's an objective like that, if it will be written in such a way that says, create this user, log in, and ensure that this password is always going to work, something like that. Because technically, the first time you log in, you'll have to change that password. I remember when I was doing some other practicing, it seemed like I did not have to change the password when doing it on the command line, but I must have either been doing something else or just misremembering, because clearly one of the examples that we tried here, we had to change that from or when we created a user from the command line, we had to alter the password. Actually, no, there's one other thing I do want to try. There's one scenario. We made a user and then modified their password. Let's see if we can just make a user from the get-go and see if we have to change its password. So IPA user add, and call it test user 5, dash help, just to check one thing here. Oh, I guess we have to give it the first name test. User 5. Now suppose I could do IPA user show test user 5 all. What I was wondering is if it will show me if its password has expired. So let me look at user status. And by the way, this returned 3 entries because of each. We have our server and the 2 replicas. All right, so let's try to log in as test user 5 and see if we are forced to change the password. I think that password grace count is significant, but that'll also be something for me to look up. Monkey123. Yeah, I'll have to change it. Okay, so I must have either done something totally different in my earlier practicing or just misremembered, but each scenario for making a user, we have to change the password after. I think I remember reading an IPA or free IPA document that talked about that being a thing. I think a user had posted a question of why do we have to do this, and they responded with here's the policy position. But to try to stay on task for this practice session, I'm pretty confident with creating users, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. If you found this useful, make sure you do click like. It does help the video and the channel, even though I think, let's see, it's currently almost October 2024. The last several months I have not published many videos, mainly because I'm on my way to the RHCA certification, or hopefully I will get that. I've passed 3 of my 5 exams that I need to do, so basically one exam after another. I do my practice sessions and record them, but it's going to be a while before I have time to put them up onto YouTube or whatever platform I'm using at the time. So as always, if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for taking the time to watch. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do click that subscribe button and ring the bell. So when I do finally have time to publish one of these videos, you'll be made aware of when it's available. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.